Thanks. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. May I have a roll call, Ms. Yancey?
Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Ms. Fallow?
Here.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Rummel?
Here.
Ms. Cotton? Here. Ms. Wood?
Here.
Ms. Tyler?
Here, thank you. Okay, for all who would like to participate, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, one nation. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rummel, can you go ahead and read our mission, vision, and equity statements, please?
Certainly. Our mission, in partnership with Home and Community, is to educate each individual child in a safe and nurturing environment. We will foster respect and self-worth, teach skills relevant to contemporary life, and promote academic success and creative expression. We will encourage an appreciation of the rich cultural diversity of our community and instill a sense of wonder for the future to enable our students to become lifelong learners and responsible citizens of the world. Our vision: Forest Park Public School District 91 will be acknowledged by all as a safe, nurturing, and diverse learning community that establishes the highest standards for innovation and continuous improvement to achieve academic excellence and global citizenship for each individual child. And our equity statement: recognizing that systemic bias has plagued our educational system, we commit to nurturing dialogue around all issues of inequality, including culture, race, faith, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, and different ability as they pertain to classroom practices, school and district structures, and policies and procedures. We support actions removing barriers to opportunities that allow children to reach their full potential.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to number 4, the consent agenda items. Is there anything that anyone would like taken off of the consent agenda? Okay. May I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
And a second. Thank you. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Fallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rummel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye, thank you. Number 5, correspondence. I don't believe we have any, right?
No correspondence.
Okey dokey. And 6, matters of consideration from the public. None. I will just make uncomfortable eye contact with everybody. Does anyone want to share anything from the public? Okay. Thank you. Okay, number 7, superintendent's report. Go ahead, Dr. Alvarez.
All right, starting off with our recognitions. So because we have a very long state of the district, I'm going to kind of lump many of these together. So I really want to thank to everyone who participated and supported our Halloween events, from making candy bags to casket races and trunk and treat. Some of them are here present in front of us, so thank you very much. We had our D91 staff and coaches, our instructional coaches. Thank you for our entire staff, Director Edler, instructional coaches, for participating and being in a space of learning for our first professional learning day on September 26th. Trunk and treat, I mentioned. Thank you to everyone who stopped by for our spooky school bus. And our school psychologist, she's here today. November 7th through 11th, 2022, schools throughout the United States celebrate National School Psychology Week. To highlight the important work of school psychologists like our very own Angela Pataro to help our students thrive throughout their career, their time here in D91. And we also have School Board Members Day. I want to thank the board for serving our community, our district, our students, and our staff, and I will read a resolution later for all of you. We also have LEGO Education Ambassador. Congratulations to Grace Finn for being selected as a LEGO Education Ambassador. She's being recognized as an innovative educator who is rethinking how students learn with hands-on STEAM learning. And I also want to acknowledge our veterans, those who are here and those who are in our memory. I particularly shout out my father, who is a veteran, Army vet, and for all those who have served our country. So just wanted to shout them out since we're celebrating tomorrow. For our FOIA, we have our Smart Procure had a FOIA. They're requesting all purchasing records from December 17th, 2021 to current day. That was the FOIA request. All right. Moving on to State of the District, I'm going to go ahead and present here. I'm going to invite Director Edler and Director Mikhail. Did I say your name right? I'm so sorry. Mikhail to help me present as well. And then I'm going to introduce our two lovely children here from a series class. This is Kennedy and Enzo, or Lorenzo. I just loved the picture, and so seeing them collaborating one another as they were doing their math lesson was a treat for me, and so I wanted to make sure I put it up there. All right, moving on. As we move on to our mission, this is what we are championing for. We have read it in the beginning here. I am not going to read it for everyone here, but as together, we are partnering with our parents, with our community, and with Forest Park all together, and making sure that our students are lifelong learners. This is our mission. This is where we are championing and where we are headed to be. Our vision also looks at what we're headed and what we're establishing. And this is looking at high standards for all our children. So again, not reading it because we read it every single time in our board meetings and any of our meetings. Regarding our equity imperative, we are acknowledging the need to go deeper into our beliefs and remove any types of barriers so all have opportunities, and really looking into whole child and what they need. And this is our equity imperative. This slide here combines our vision, our mission, and our equity imperative together, and saying that as we start building and providing the moves, the actions, the inputs that we want the right outputs for, we are looking at building a strategic school-to-school, as well as within the school, these relationships that our teachers are building, our staff is building, our principals are building with one another, and also bringing that sense of belonging. So you will see here we have Betsy Ross, our K-2 school, our Shining Stars. And we also have our Garfield preschool to second grade, looking at our bears there at Garfield. Moving on to our intermediate, which is our Field Stevenson, our Sharks from 3 to 5, and then our Forest Park Middle School, our Panthers from 6 to 8. And keeping in mind that we have our 3 priorities laid out there, with equity always being at the center. We have not changed our core values. They continue to be the same, really making sure that we are involving all for that sense of belonging, making sure that we have the high standards as we teach each and every child, making sure that our children and our families are feeling safe and our children are feeling nurtured within the environment that we're providing them, that our teachers are highly qualified, and that we have programs and learning opportunities for all our children in a space where it's conducive for all, and then making sure that we have open and honest two-way communication, whether it's from family to teacher, teacher to principal, and also through the district. And this is one way of doing that, by actually providing the State of the District to everyone. And more importantly, too, is that we can't do all this if we don't have money. So we need to be fiscally responsible in our planning. Going to be showing you a lot of data today. So looking at enrollment, attendance, and grades. I apologize, it's a little small on there. We will be putting this on our website, so just so for everyone to know. This one here is looking at our present day and our projection to 2027. If we were to take just 75% of our children born here in Forest Park, not 100%, just 75% of our children decide to go to Forest Park. These are the numbers that you will see from 24, 25, 26, and 27. But these are the numbers right now for 23. If you look at the blue line, that's where we are for kindergarten, we're at 85. First grade, it's 74. Second, 74. Third, 72. Fourth, 57. Fifth, 63. Sixth grade, 62. Seventh grade, 58. And then eighth is 37. That's where we are presently. If we were to project to 2026, where our vision is headed, you will see that the numbers do drop. Again, this is only if we were to take 75% of the children born here. I did not take 100%. And then this one here actually shows our enrollment from kindergarten to 8th grade. This is from preschool through 8th grade. Again, looking at 75% only. We are at 582. This is the number you will see here. From 24 to 27 is the projection of our enrollment if 75% of our children attended here. And so you will see it'll be the same amount the following year, but there will be slightly a dip that happens all the way up to 2027.
Just a real quick question. So we're assuming, so this is basically telling us we have fewer kids in the community, not that we're getting fewer of them.
Correct. And this is, less children being born, with the exception you'll see during the pandemic, we had a little bit of a baby boom that happened there. All right, moving on to student average enrollment. So this is for our school year right now. You will see that we're at 698 students. Last year, we were at 704. Doing the math, we lost about 20 children from our second grade going on to third grade. This is looking at our student enrollment by race and ethnicity. You will see here the majority of our children are Black population at 43.1%, and our Latino is at 22.6%. Together, they make up 65.7% of our enrollment here at Forest Park, with the 698. Moving on to our daily average attendance. So you will see students is in green and our teachers are in blue. If we look at our students, you will see that the average was about 94% of our children were attending. This last one is looking at quarter one. So we're right there in the same kind of amount, 94%. So if I could just do a shout out to our children, we could do better. Let's keep it going. 94%, we could hit it at 95. And then if you will notice on our blue, this is our attendance for our teachers. You will see that there was a bit of an increase during the pandemic time of 2021 when we opened school a little bit, and then last year at 94.9%, which was pretty awesome that our teachers were attending, knowing that the pandemic is still happening, everything's occurring, and now here we are at 2023, our teachers at 94.8. So I'm pretty proud of both our students and our teachers. All right. Moving on to our daily attendance by grade. And much of what you're seeing now, this is for the crowd, is the board had asked me for several different scenarios, and this is what you're seeing here. So you will see, looking at pre-kinder all the way to second grade here, the green is quarter one, and then the yellow would be last year, just to give you an idea of what you're seeing here. So we are doing better in our green for first quarter from last year, in each one of these, from pre-kinder, kinder, first, and second grade. But if you look at our 2020, this is the time that our children were remote. Obviously, this was a little bit better. Okay, and this is by grade. And then we will see the same when we go up to third, fourth, and fifth. Our green is first quarter. Our fifth graders did do a little bit of a dip there, you will notice. And then again, if you look at 2020 and what that looks like compared to now. Our red is the 2021. That's what the kind of reopening. But you will see that COVID was around. Okay. And then moving on to our middle school 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Our this is for first quarter, 95% at our sixth graders, 93% for our seventh, and 90% for our eighth graders. And this is based on making sure that we're taking attendance for our sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. This is done by each time that they're in class, because depending on when they come in. So just to give you the, of what's happening with attendance there. Okay, so we really want to keep this going and making sure that our children are attending. Yes?
So for middle school, attendance gets taken every class period.
You got
Is that
it.
right? Which is different than how we do it for pre-K to 5.
Correct.
They
And that
get
was
it.
not something that we were doing in the past, and we want to make sure that we're getting accurate. So if a child comes in tardy, they're present for a certain class, but not necessarily for their first class. So we're getting more accurate attendance for our children. All right. Now moving, I think I'm missing the slide of subgroups, but we'll go into the race and ethnicity. In our race and ethnicity, we're at 41.5% of free and reduced, seeing that our majority of our students that are free and reduced are our Black students at 23.9%. And then following our Latinos at 11.2%. There is one slide missing, I'm not sure. I will get that to you. We had a average daily attendance by subgroup, which shows our students by Asian, Black, Latino, 2 or more, and our white. I'm not sure why it's not showing up on here, but we'll make sure to get that to you. But it's on there showing the percentages on there. And just so I can mention, our students that are showing least amount of attendance showing up is our Black students at 83%. And that's for first quarter. Okay. All right, I'm going to give this to Director Edler.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. My name is James Edler, Director of Learning and Innovation. This next grouping of slides that we're going to look at represents our students' progress as indicated by their report card, and they are grouped together by grade. Just a couple of things to note as we're reviewing some of these data. First of all, we do not have our kindergartners do not get report cards until after the second quarter. Okay, so we will not have any kindergarten data here. Also, these are, strictly from the first quarter of the 22-23 school year. And it's also important to note that the primary schools do use a different report card than our intermediate and middle schools. So our primary is using a standards-based report card, where our intermediate and middle schools are using a traditional report card. So as we look at these data, you're going to see on the slides that indicate the student progress in both first and second grade as represented as achieved, progressing, limited growth, and no growth, okay? So those categories are different than what we'll see on that traditional report card where we've got the traditional A, B, C, D, and F. It's important though to recognize that when we consider achieved, that there is not an equivalence of an A. They're different just by nature. Don't want to get too far into the weeds of that, but it's just important to note that is not a one-to-one correlation. Achieved means they've achieved the standard. An A would mean, maybe a number of different factors that are included in that: homework, effort, participation, that kind of thing. So as we look at these, we're going to see, first of all, ELA, the percent of students that are making progress at the first grade and second grade, and we can see that first achieved and progressing categories. And as we begin to compare those to the other traditional grades, you'll see some variance there as we look at those bars. So if we go on to the next one. So then we're looking now at our ELA and our third, fourth, and fifth graders that are intermediate grades. And you can see the distribution is a little bit different here, right? So we're looking at, for example, our A's and B's, particularly when we look at our third grade and our fifth grade, are disproportionate compared to what we were looking at in the standards-based report card and that distribution at the primary level. So then moving on, we've got the data relative to ELA, and this is our middle school data. So now we've got our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And then now we will shift back to the primary where we're using that standards-based report card, and this in particular is with mathematics for our 1st and 2nd graders. So you can see, like in this one, for example, the percentage of students that are achieved and are progressing in 2nd grade compared to those of their 1st grade peers. This then is back to the traditional report card in our intermediate grades, 3, 4, and 5 for mathematics and the student progress there in 1st quarter. And then the next slide is our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so in middle school. Then these last 2 slides, we've got science on this slide, and this is for our intermediate grades, so 3, 4, and 5. Again, on that traditional report card, we can see that distribution of A's, B's, C's, and D's. And then we go into science for our middle school students in 6th, 7th, and 8th, and that distribution. And then lastly, we have social studies data. So we're looking at our student progress in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and intermediate. And then the next slide is that distribution and percentages of our students who are achieving A's, B's, C's, et cetera, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in social studies.
All right, now moving on to absenteeism and grades and seeing how they correlate. Yeah, question.
Yeah, I have a
Sorry.
Mr. Adler, is there, what does it mean what we just saw? Like, should there be an ideal distribution of grades? I was really struck. I've had time to digest this, so I've done it, but I was really struck by 8th grade ELA, 7th and 8th grade science, the amount of C's. That's sort of the predominant grade. I'm not saying anything except to state that fact. Is there a way that the grade distribution should be?
Well, one of the things that we're working on within the district is a district-wide initiative around grading for equity to make our grading systems standards-based and more consistent from grade to grade and teacher to teacher. This will, what we're really trying to get at with that initiative is making sure that our grades are accurate, bias resistant, and are really a rallying point and motivation for students as an indicator of their learning rather than, their compliance or number of points that they've earned.
Right. Because there's obviously, I'm not implying that there's a right or a wrong or what, that's above what I'm supposed to be here to do, right? But one of the things that I think is interesting that 7th and 8th grade marks are considered for high school, right? Placement, entrance, and so it doesn't mean that we stack the deck, but I just think I'm curious, I want to stay on top of this. I'm curious about this distribution around those middle school grades in particular.
And as we think about the grades, while we know that there are many flaws with standardized assessments, at the same time, when we look at the grades as being an indicator of their meeting or exceeding or their proficiency, so to speak, relative to that grade level learning, there ought to be some correlation between what we're seeing on our screeners and standardized assessments as well as the grades that students are receiving to be representative of what they're learning and their progress.
Agreed. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so now looking at grades and children who are absent frequently or chronically absent. So there are a total of 151 students that fell within the 10% and above absenteeism for quarter 1. And this is where it fell with the subgroup here. So you will see 35% of our Asian students, 21% of our Black students, 25 of our Latino, 13 2 or more, and 19 of our white students. So overall, 22% of our students are absent within the 151. Okay. And so if we move on to looking at grades, the way Director Edler has just shown us, moving on to our Asian population, you will see that the majority of them are having achieved to progressing and about 22% of them only on limited progress. Now, this is only 4 Asian students, and the reason why it's only 4 Asian students is because some of them are in preschool. So that's why you'll see it that way. And then same thing goes for math, you'll see it's progressing. Then you will see for Ella, for our black students, the majority of our students here are within the progressing and limited progress. And then for A's and B's, C's and D's, you will see them in A's and B's that they are receiving. And that's 43 of our children there. And then for math, you will see where they range from limited progress to progressing for our earlier years. And then for our higher years, you will see the majority of them getting C's. Okay. Moving on to our Latino population, you will see them hitting the progressing and limited progress for our younger children. And then for math, they are here and under progressing and achieved, and then A's and B's when it comes to grades for our higher. And then for our 2 or more, again, you see them in the middle there between limited progress and progressing. And then for math, the same thing. If we look at our white population, we have 18 there. Majority are in progressing, and then limited progress. And then for A's and B's, there's 18 of them, so it's only like 6% and 6%. Excuse me, 6% in A, 3% in C. As we look at our math, majority of them are within the achieved and progressing, and B's are what they're receiving. Moving on to the absenteeism by grade, you will see the majority of them are in kinder. And then, I don't know if we have, no, we don't. So here we do not have our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders because we weren't able to update that with our new system to show the accuracy of the attendance there. But we do have all the way up to 5th grade showing kinder is the majority of our children absent. Something we should know, chronic absenteeism in kindergarten is associated with lower academic performance in 1st grade, with the impact being 2 times greater for students from low-income families. And compared to kindergarten students with average absences, chronically absent kindergartners gained 14% fewer literacy skills. 1st grade chronically absent students gained 15% fewer literacy skills and 12% fewer math skills. And so the importance of attendance in kindergarten is a big deal.
Can you, I know we talked about this last meeting, I asked for clarification, but just for everybody else, can you remind us again of what absenteeism is, what the definition of that is?
Sure. So if you were to take, so we have 10 weeks in each of the quarter, but if you were to be absent 3 times within just each quarter, that would be chronic.
An unexcused absence.
And unexcused absences, correct.
Thank you.
But in this case, we are using both unexcused and excused because they're absent. Okay.
So the next grouping of slides then is looking at again, going back to the student progress as it's reported on their report card, and looking specifically at that subgroup of students that are in that chronic absenteeism category. In these slides, of course, we don't have grades for kindergarten, as I had indicated earlier, or for our pre-K, but of course they would be included in our percentages of relative to absenteeism. Also, again, as Dr. Alvarez mentioned, we do not have the data in here for the 6th through 8th grade relative to chronically absent. But for here, with these slides, we can see that, the students who were in that category, and by the way, there were also 5 students who were in that category who have since transferred out of the district in the 1st quarter. So that's also a consideration. But you can see here that, of those students who are chronically absent, looking at their progress as reported on their report card for our 1st graders, we had 59% of students who were still achieved those proficiency on those standards, and 57% of those students from our 2nd grade. So in the next slide, then we're going to be looking at our intermediate grades, 3, 4, and 5. You know, and here you can begin to look at some of the differences in terms of the percentages, especially when it comes to like the A's. We've got 61% of those students that we're showing here that received an A, even though they were chronically absent in that first quarter. We've got 70% of our fourth graders, and then 57% of our fifth graders for ELA.
So just looking at the graphs, I'm struck by the fact that we seem to have some really high-performing students who are chronically absent, and that seems counterintuitive. And I was wondering if we have any idea how these students who are not here as often as they should be are scoring as well. Like, I'm looking at the fifth grade chart in ELA, and they're doing very well. So there's a discrepancy there I don't understand.
Well, something to consider, of course, is this is only first quarter data. So, you know, as we were, maybe we would look at that over the course of a year. If the chronically absenteeism was continuing, we would see a cumulative effect of that absenteeism over the course of the year. So we are just looking at the first quarter. And, you know, as we look at specifically where these grades came from, we'd have to kind of get into the crosstabs specifically to look at where, you know, where that is. You know, I will say when it comes to looking more closely at a standards-based system, you know, we would be looking specifically at progress towards standards, you know, not like missing homework, for example, which could be a part of that or not.
Okay, so this is GPA based solely on classroom. It's not based on like standardized tests.
That's right. These
Okay.
are grades from class, from their class performance,
Understood. Thank you.
classroom performance. Okay, so now we're looking back at our first and second graders, in that small group of students who were chronically absent. So 63% of them have still achieved, and then in second grade, 64%. Looking just specifically at those standards for that first quarter. And next in mathematics, we're looking at our third, fourth, and fifth graders. And these, again, back to that traditional report card, we got 41% of our third graders, 50% of our fourth graders, and then our fifth graders, we got 50% of our fifth graders who are still achieving an A in that subgroup.
Good evening, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the board, community members, families. When we start looking at kids, which is our early learning kindergarten individual developmental survey, we look at 3 developmental areas. We look at mathematics, language arts and literacy, and social emotional development. And it's testing students during the first 40 days of their kindergarten year. So looking at this first set of data, we're looking at 2019. The reason that we're looking at 2019 is that is the last set of data that we can use without utilizing the COVID data. When we're looking at COVID data, there wasn't the allotted amount of students that are necessary in order for us to gauge the kids' surveys. So looking at our readiness, specifically with mathematics, we had 43% of our students in 2019 that were displaying readiness in mathematics. In language arts, again, focusing on 2019, we're looking at 67%. And then social emotional development, we are looking at 86% back in 2019. Our scores individually look great, but collectively, under the 3 developmental areas, we're only at 39%. So again, looking at each one of our percentages, we had a percentage of 67%, 86%, and 43%. But when we combine them and look at each individual student, we only had 39% of our students that had developmental across all three areas. Of those 39%, here's the breakdown based on subgroups. 21% for 2018 and 25% for 2017. So looking over the subgroups of all 3 areas, our Asian population was 67%, Black 29%, Latino 33%, 2 or more races 38%, and white 50%.
The next two slides are going to display the last 3 years at the same point in time for our Fast Bridge screener, which is our benchmark assessment. That's a universal screener that's administered to all of our students 3 times a year. And this is that fall screener over the course of 3 years. So a couple of things that are important to highlight here, and I think there's some really nice highlights here and some real bright spots when we look at some of these data. And it's in areas certainly of growth as well. But the first slide here, we're looking at strictly meeting or exceeding grade level standards in literacy. And you see all, our grades across the bottom from first grade through 8th grade, and over to the left, we see the overall performance. So, or furthest to the right, that is. And when you look at that furthest to the right data point, you'll notice that very similar data from both the last year's school year as well as our current school year. So in fall, overall, 57% of students were either meeting or exceeding that benchmark expectation for fall. You notice that in the school year 21, that's the fall of 21, we were at 60%, so it was a little bit higher meeting and exceeding in that year. But just as a caveat, in the fall of 21, we were administering the Fast Bridge screener remotely. So there is a little bit of a variance there in terms of the standardization of the administration of that assessment. Some of the things to also point out then, if we're looking particularly at our 5th and 6th graders, you can see here the current cohort of 5th graders and 6th graders are outperforming their previous cohorts from the last 2 years. Okay, so when we look at 68% of our 5th graders, 69% of our 6th graders are meeting or exceeding that benchmark standard for the school year 2023. And then, one of the things that you can begin to compare is the cohort data over time. So, for example, if we look at those students who are 4th graders in 22, we've got 65% of the students in fall who are meeting or exceeding. Then those students as 5th graders in the fall of 23, they are now at 68% meeting or exceeding. So that's a highlight there where we're seeing that kind of growth over the course of that year for that cohort of students. Similarly, when we look at our current 6th graders at 69% meeting or exceeding, in fall of last year as 5th graders, we had 52% of those students who were meeting or exceeding.
Just a question for, as we look at this, given how few students we have per grade, I mean, it's well under 100 for the most part, I would expect these to vary a lot. So like when we look at 4th, 5th, and 6th, for example, and you've got blue to red to yellow, you could have 1 or 2 students move in or out of the district and one other one have a bad day, and that's going to move these numbers a lot. Is that a fair?
So with the smaller number of students, the average and the percentage is going to be a little bit more volatile, so we'll fluctuate and change. Which again, then why I think it's important to begin looking at cohort data. So where were those students as 4th graders and how they progressed as 5th graders fall to fall?
So it's developmental as well. So you've got fewer students, you've got them developing over the course of years, and then you've got some coming in and out. So this
Right.
is, okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. And then the next slide here is mathematics. So as we look at the performance of our students on the Fast Bridge benchmark assessment this fall, compared to the other three years, again, you'll see that in that overall, that school year 21, a little bit, the percentage is 5% higher than we were in both 22 and 23. But again, just to consider that was administered remotely in that year. Some of the other things to point out here and to highlight is as we're looking at our third, fourth, and our third, fourth, and fifth and sixth grade here, you know, and we're comparing how those students are performing at that particular time relative to other students in previous grade levels. We notice that, you know, in each one of these years, we have made some progress. Those incoming students are performing higher from that 22 to 23 school year. Okay, so for example, we look at our third graders in the fall of 22 at 55% meeting or exceeding that benchmark standard, and then in our current third graders, 63% of those students meeting or exceeding the benchmark standard. So, you know, we're looking at that comparison of where are these students at third grade compared to other students at that same point in time from previous years. And then again, we can look at some of the cohort data. So for example, the fourth graders in the school year 22, 56% of the students were meeting or exceeding that benchmark standard in fall, whereas that same cohort in the school year 2023 as fifth graders, we have 60% of those students who are meeting or exceeding that benchmark in fall.
Do you want to mention anything about 7th and 8th grade?
Right, so when we look at the 7th and 8th grade, this is certainly an area of growth and an area that, you know, we really need to pay close attention to, because as we see those students both compared to peers, you know, in previous years, as well as that cohort data, and we see that, you know, those percentages beginning to fall off. So for example, when we look at our sixth graders in the school year 2022, we have 49% of them at this point meeting or exceeding that benchmark. And that same group of students then this year in fall, only 36% of those students are meeting or exceeding that benchmark standard.
Do we have any insight into why this is?
Again, Steve? Sorry.
Sorry. Do we have any insight into why that is? That's a pretty steep drop.
A pretty steep drop, is that what you said? Again, you know, that would be something that we would have to really begin to look at some of the specifics that are underlying that. Certainly, looking at our students going from, you know, 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade, just like in previous years, the benchmark does, of course, increase. You know, so the expectation as a 7th grader is going to be higher than it was in the 6th grade. But yeah, that is certainly an area of concern that we want to be addressing and thinking about, and making sure that we are really taking some active steps when it comes to supporting their learning, you know, in those middle school years when we see that kind of drop from 6 to 7 to 8.
Given that, sorry about that. Is that better? Yeah. So given that our class size actually dropped, right? So 7th and 8th is where we really see a steep drop off in students. I would assume, have the resources to understand exactly what's happening with these students in those years. And we're able to look and say, okay, why are they not meeting these standards? Do we have that ability?
So as we look at those students performing over the course of the year, certainly we look at like the fall, winter, and spring relative to this benchmark, and then, you know, work to provide the supports that those students need, and that would be the area where we certainly need to focus on and strengthen, and that's the supports that those students are getting in terms of interventions and supports, in middle school, when we're noticing that they are, beginning to be in that tier 2 or tier 3 category when maybe previously they were in a tier 1 category.
We also have a new math curriculum this year, which is something that last year the teachers were telling me like they did not have one. They really wanted one, and the committee was formed. So we're looking forward to seeing how this math curriculum, as well as obviously our teachers teaching at the mastery of the core rather than the grade level. And our academic coaches, yes.
I just have one quick question, and maybe I'm reading the data wrong, but it also looks like with reading and early learning, the fast-paced testers, there appears to be just a plateau, right? They're staying in the same level, and what I'm curious is what could be done and what could be considered to break free from that plateau? What are your ideas of what could be done? Because I also wonder if there's a correlation between that plateau in reading and that drop in math.
Yeah. But one of the things that we brought this year too is the instructional core, like really going deep into what it means to teach the standard, the how, the what, and the why, providing the agency and authority and identity for our students so that they take over their own learning as well. So that's something very new here at Forest Park. We're at our second year. We're getting better at it. So, I mean, I know a couple of you have attended that, and as the questioning comes by, it's more of, okay, where's the gap? What else do we need to do? And making sure that we're discussing that amongst our teachers and providing that time for them to really collaborate and plan together.
Thank you.
So the next group of slides looks at the data from the standpoint of growth, rather than just strictly the met or exceeded that benchmark expectation. And, you know, as we look at as the growth, at the student growth, I think it's important to recognize that this is a, you know, big part of what is included on the district report card. Actually in a much greater percentage than is, for example, the strictly like meeting or exceeding in these particular categories. So as we look at the first one, and just please note that this is the growth relative to the school year of 21-22. So in order, we will have to wait until we can actually have a comparison chart for the 22-23, which would then be, you know, our fall screening data compared to our winter screening data. And that's when we'll begin to get some data specifically for this year relative to how students are either meeting or exceeding or having lower growth than expected, for example. That's what these data indicate. So overall, when we're looking at our reading, our literacy growth, we are meeting the expected growth, and this is just a breakdown of where we are by each one of the schools. And then as we get into the next chart, we look specifically at particular grade levels. One thing to note here, you can see in our first graders, they've got higher growth than expected, so that's definitely a bright spot for us there. And the rest of those grade levels are meeting their expected growth in literacy. Again, looking at last year's growth. So then the next one is a breakdown of looking at the student subgroups. We've got our emergent bilingual students, and then, you know, the various ethnicities as well as gender, IEPs. And that's one of the areas where you'll notice in this particular graph, we've got all of those subgroups that are meeting the expected growth, with the exception of our IEP students who are lower than expected growth. So then we shift to looking at mathematics. And as we look at math, although we are overall still meeting that within that standard deviation where we're in that category of expected growth, but as we look specifically, you know, at you know, that percentage of students that are falling into those low growth categories, you know, we've got 31% and 20% from Field Stevenson and Forest Park Middle School, respectively. And that is why, just overall, as we look at that, we've got that yellow circle next to that, which indicates lower than expected growth. In order for us to, you know, really make any changes there, what we would need to do is to shift those students from, you know, being that percentage of students who are low growth into their expected growth, or better yet, into the, higher growth categories. And that becomes a little bit more prevalent as we move on to the grade levels and we start really digging into the data here around mathematics. We can see that, particularly in third grade, in first grade, as indicated here, we've got, again, higher growth than expected in first grade. But then as we get into third grade, we see that we've got, unsatisfactory growth in mathematics. If you look at that, we've got 44% of our third graders who were in that low growth percentile, and only 2% of those third graders who were in the high growth. So that explains why we are, not in the expected growth categories or higher than expected growth, because of the percentage of students that are showing that low growth in third grade. And then again, we've got this broken down for mathematics, looking at this by subgroup. Some of the things to note here, we're looking at our emergent bilingual students, and 18% of them in that low growth category versus 9% in high growth, which explains why that circle next to that subgroup is yellow. And then looking at our students, our Black students, the 22% in that low growth, only 7% in the high growth. And then looking at by gender, we look at female students, where we got 23% of those students in low growth and only 9% in high growth. I mean, we really need to flip this, right? In order to get us where we need to be relative to our students making that expected growth. And then as far as our students who have an IEP, 22% of those students in that low growth versus only 8% in the high growth area.
All right, so now that we looked at our fast bridge, now let's look at our summative assessment, which is our IAR, and which is used for our report card. And so if we look at IR, we're going to be looking at proficiency. The meets and exceeds is our proficiency. So if we look at our cohorts, this is our 8th graders right now, our current 8th graders. If we were to follow them in Ella in math, you would see them here at 31%, which is lower than the 50th percentile, which is where we want our children to be. They move over to 4th grade and they get 43%. Then in 5th grade, they're at 31%. Pandemic hits, and now they're at 23%. It's hard to swallow. This is about our proficiency. So it's really hard to swallow. Then if you look at our math, this is even harder to see our 28, 15, 15, pandemic, and then 2% is where they are. I'm sorry, this was last year's 8th graders. Excuse me. So this is for our last year's 8th graders. These are now our current 8th graders. And so our current 8th graders right now, we're wanting to see next year is this rise or increase here. So you will see the same thing happening here. Ella, they're at 43%, still below the 50th. They gained some momentum at 48%. Boom, pandemic, 21%. And then we have math, 45, 31, pandemic, 7%. So this is where our current 8th graders are. Moving on to our current 7th graders. You will see them here at almost a 50th% in Ella, 43% in math. Then we have our pandemic. They go into 6th grade, they're at 9% and 8%. And then finally, we have here our current 6th graders. We don't have any of the data here because of the pandemic, but we do have this for them during that time. And these are our current fifth graders and the data we have for them right now. And then finally, our current fourth graders. So these are just by cohorts in regards to proficiency.
Dr. A, I just
Sure.
want to make sure people understand that when you say report card, she means that Illinois, like this, our state school report card, that's what this data is utilized for, and it is how we get our ratings.
Correct.
All of that.
And so, as like last year, I want to be able to compare our district to other districts and see where we are. Again, talking about proficiency, here is our line. Here for Ella, the orange is Forest Park. You will find them here for third grade, for fifth grade, and for eighth grade. And this time we put it in order of height, show where we're at. And then for math, it's a little bit more slim or hard to, again, to swallow. But you will see that here, at least, we're reaching the 50th percentile until we get to eighth grade. Okay.
Again, taking a look at subgroup performance, you'll notice the green represents meeting or exceeding in that category. It's broken up by all students, low income versus non-low income, female versus male, non-IEP students, and race is broken up into black or white. Now, I want you to bring your attention to the areas that are circled, and the areas that are most meeting and exceeding are non-low income and our white students. The top portion is broken up by grades, 3 through 8th for Ella, followed by 3 through 8th for math. So take a look at the chart, take a look at the subgroups. This allows us to really break down the areas of our subgroups and be able to analyze where to focus. The next piece when it comes to IAR is talking about growth.
David?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, really quick. What's the reason for some of these having blanks?
That could be either not enough students represented in that category or in that grade.
Got it. Thank you.
The next area of focus is looking at IAR and looking at growth for IAR. Again, IAR is broken up into Ella and math for the 2022 school year. We take a look at that data point, and the areas of growth that we would like to point out is how much growth is documented for some of our subgroups. If I can bring your attention to some of those subgroups, on the left represents districts, so the light green represents our district versus the dark green, which represents the state. And our areas in subgroups, there are several areas that we are above the state. So on the top represents Ella, and on the bottom, if you take a look, there's math. And all of the growth in our different subgroups.
And just to highlight in regards to this, as you saw the proficiency, obviously we have a ways to go into growing, but if you look at our growth, we are superseding in the state. And we want to continue in that route, which allows us to get our report card. You get more points for growth, obviously.
On this slide, it looks like there's a non-binary category, but I don't believe that in other spots we've seen that. Is there a reason why it's either absent or it's only here?
I'm not, I'll find out for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's on the, Jessica's taking a look at it right now,
Okay,
too.
Thanks.
Yeah, the non-binary is for the state. It's not for ours. We don't have anything for us. That bar graph is for the state. Yeah. Okay, moving on to 5 essentials. This is the one that's from the University of Chicago, something that we pushed last year to our parents, to our students, to our teachers. And so as you look at this, you will see the amount of Students, teachers, and parents that have participated in the 5 essentials. Again, this is used for our report card. If we look at Betsy, 82.8% of our teachers responded to 78.6% of our parents. Field Stevenson had a student rate of 98.7, teacher rate of 96.4, and parent rate of 83.5. I know that Principal Bogdan was really pushing for that. And then Forest Park Middle School, 94.7% of our students responded to 78.4% of our teachers, and the least amount of our parents of 39.2%. And then Garfield, obviously, Garfield and Betsy, they don't get the students because you have to be in 4th grade. Teacher rate is 93.9 and 51.5% of parents. Keep in mind, the difficulty about this too for our parents is that they had to answer more than one survey, because if you had a child in more than one school, it became very confusing. So I could understand some of these lower percentages with parents, just to let you know. But if we look at the colors, this is what where Forest Park stands. And what we want to see is all of those being green. As of right now, we're showing green for ambitious instruction, which is how our students respond to the survey. And then you will see effective leaders and collaborative teachers, which is under weak, and that is where the teachers respond, and supportive environment involved families, which is under neutral, which is where our families respond. So overall, we are at moderately organized, where we want to be as well organized by 2026, if not earlier. And these are the categories, just so you can see where we stand. This is a little bit hard for people to see, but overall, this is showing for ambitious instruction where we were in 2021. Our children come back to school, we reopen, and they're saying that we are now at strong. This is coming from Field Stevenson children and our Forest Park Middle School students, so we bumped up about 26 points with the ambitious instruction. If we look at our supportive environment, Field Stevenson is saying it's strong at 76, and Forest Park Middle School at neutral, so we went down about 4 points in Forest Park Middle School. And so overall, though, because of Field Stevenson, we were bumped up a notch there. And this is where we declined. Involved families, I'm going to go ahead and say this is because of the pandemic. We weren't allowing our families in the buildings last year. There was a lot of stuff doing remote with our families as well. But you will see here that our Betsy Ross families are saying neutral, which was a negative 12 from the year before. Field Stevenson Elementary went up at 6 points. Forest Park Middle School stayed at a 22, and Garfield went up by 5 at 54. And for our collaborative teachers, we went down. Again, there could be a lot of reasons behind this. Everyone was wearing masks. Everyone was kind of isolated, keeping away from one another. We did a lot of Zoom or Google to meet with teachers. So you have Betsy Ross at 45, went down negative 17 points. Field Stevenson went up by 10, 39. Forest Park Middle School stayed at 16. And in Garfield Elementary at 33, going down by 1, which gives us the score that we have here, which is a little bit, about 30 points. And then effective leaders, we will see a notch down as well. Betsy Ross went down by 11 for 50. Field Stevenson went up by 12, 58. Forest Park Middle stayed at 22. And then Garfield went down by 3 to 45, putting us at a 40. This is something new. The Equity Journey Continuum is new to Illinois. It was introduced sometime last year. This is not on our report card yet. However, they are introducing it to us and providing us with our scores. And so that's why it's important that we're watching it carefully. And so as we look at equity and what does educational equity mean, It's truly just making sure that we're providing the needs for all our children and keeping the high expectations. It is not equality. So the figure you see here is if we were to be equal for all our children, we would give all our children a 10-speed bike, but not all of them would be able to ride that 10-speed bike to proficiency. And so depending on the needs of the student, they will need a different type of bike. And if we are truly doing equity, we would provide them the right type of bike to get to their destination to success and meet the expectations. And so the equity continuum is looking at three aspects. It's looking at student learning, it's looking at learning conditions, and it's looking at elevating educators. If we look at student learning, we're at a 2.08, which is still at step 2. Learning conditions is 2.82, the far end of step 2, and elevating educators is 3.78 towards the end of step 3. And so we want to be able to get further to step 4 towards the end of that. If we're looking at student learning data elements, basically this is saying that every child will make significant academic gains each year, increasing their knowledge, skills, and opportunities so they graduate equipped to pursue a successful future, with the state paying special attention to addressing historic inequities. And so the things that they are looking at here are kids that we just had Mr. McHale show you. We're also looking at various assessments, our emergent bilingual students, and algebra for our students. Those are enrolled and those that are passing. I will say here at Forest Park, we do not offer algebra. This is something that we are looking into to make sure that we do offer this to our children. And then for our student learning equity elements, keeping in mind for our, this is other points, our kids, as he mentioned, we're at 39%, which is below the 50% for kids. But this is where we fall in each one. You will see kids is right here. You will then see other assessments like the IAR is here, 2.4. For our emergent bilinguals are actually all over here at 4.8, providing the right resources for them. And then if you look at algebra, obviously it's 1.8. Why is it at 1.8 after I told you we don't offer algebra? We do offer algebra inside the math curriculum. That's part of the curriculum starting from kindergarten, but it's not just an algebra course. That's the difference. And so then you will also see enrolled at 1.8 because children are having algebra within their 8th grade math classes. And then learning conditions. Our learning conditions are all districts and schools will receive the resources necessary to create safe, healthy, and welcoming learning environments and will be equipped to meet the unique academic and social emotional needs of each and every student. And so this is really looking at the survey, the 5 E's that I just finished showing you, as well as student attendance, as well as discipline. Any of our out-of-school, in-school suspensions are being scored here. If we look a little bit deeper into this, you will see that much of this is by teacher and responses and student attendance, where we get scored for this. And you will see where we fall short. So our climate survey is down here at 1.5. Obviously, you just saw the 5 E's. And then, again, a 2.0 by our teacher responses. The same goes for the other side. This is from our parents and our students responding at a 2.0 for our climate survey, and that's where we fall. Moving on to elevating educators. Illinois' diverse student population will have educators who are prepared through multiple pathways and are supported in and recognized for their efforts to provide each and every child an education that meets their needs. And so as you look here, it's looking at the ratio from educator and student. That means racial, ethnic demographics comparison, where we fall short. We're looking at administrator and students ratio regarding racial and ethnic demographics as well. We're looking at teacher experience, so at least one teacher with 4 years experience or a master's degree. We're looking at teacher evaluations, so making sure that our children are taught with teachers that have excellent to proficient ratings. And then teacher out of field. So students who are taught by an out of field teacher for at least 50% of their coursework. That could be algebra as well. So, or it could be language, it could be other things that we're providing our children. And this is where we fall in regards to elevating educators. You will see our lowest here is educator to student. This is in regards to our demographics. Finally, getting on to our annual summative designation. So all that data to tell you where we fall. And so we do have two of our schools, Betsy Ross, which is our K-2, and Field Stevenson, which is our 3 to 5 school, falling within the commendable. And we were really proud to have Field Stevenson there because last year they were at the targeted support. So moving them up to commendable says a lot about the leadership that is there and our teachers that are there as we're moving up where we want to be. And then we're still at a targeted support for our Forest Park Middle School, our 6th to 8th grade. And this is mainly because one or more of our student groups, mainly our diverse students, that are needing a little bit more support. It also means that when we look at our commendable, we're not at the top 10%, but we're also not at the bottom 5%. So we really want to get to our exemplary to get to the top 10% and hopefully blue ribbon. All of that to tell you about our big picture. You have seen this before, looking at the why, the what, and the how of where we want to be in 2026. Looking at our 80% growth in ELA and math, we are, this is here that I'm circling, we are currently at 52% in ELA and 54% in math. We did provide that to all our families in advance and saying that we want our growth to go up and hit the 80th percentile or at least be very close. I do want to talk a little bit about the 80% with ESGI, which is Educational Software for Guiding Instruction. That is our preschool. We know that our preschool teachers and our preschool is a beacon of Forest Park. We also know that the majority of our students there do not stay, and mainly because they're not Forest Parkers. They leave to where they're headed, either Oak Park, other schools where they are now sent to because of kindergarten. So if we look at this, the ESGI is what we use in our preschool. And after speaking with Principal Stauder, one of the things we want to do is really focus on how our children in preschool, how we are developing them for our kids' assessment, so that they are prepared for our 3 areas. And as Mr. McHale was saying, we want to be able to push up to 50% or more. We're going a little bit different. So I'm looking at this saying we should be looking at 80% for our kids' readiness for the children who start at Forest Park. Because keep in mind, some of our children starting kindergarten are coming from other preschools or coming not having preschool at all. And so we wouldn't count them in that 80%. This 39% that he mentioned is including children from all aspects, from here at Forest Park and those who have entered into Forest Park without being in our preschool or who have never attended preschool. So that's where the 39% comes in, just to give you an idea. We will hopefully have a better percentage to talk about our children here from our preschool and how they did in kids, and hoping that that percentage actually goes higher because we want to show off a little bit of what our preschool does and provide that percentage for everyone. And so we are looking at our partners a little bit differently. We have our internal partners, our offices that we have here. We also have external partners. So we're looking at our public library, our community center, our village, our principal mentors that they now have. We also have universities for student teachers that have come in, Camino Group that has helped us with our data, our Care Solace to help us with our social emotional, our Park District overall. We have ECRIS that has helped us with data as well. We have our Metro Chicago Mathematics Initiative, and then our after-school programs that have just started for our children that truly make a difference and look at the whole child as well. And if I could just talk a little bit of our successes from last year to this year, I will not read to you all, but some of the highlights that we have had are looking at developing a strategic plan that was not here at Forest Park. So that has now been developed, and saying that we're reaching our 2026 goals. We have also developed a district improvement plan that our district leadership looks at every 5 weeks to look at our milestones, our goals, and making sure that we are reaching them within our impact goals. And that is done every 6th week, because our 5th week comes in our data. The 6th week we sit and start delving into it. And the same goes for our school leadership teams, that they will, all ensembles, they will also be looking at them every 5 weeks, or 6 weeks as well. For our family and community engagement, we have now tightened up our safety, climate, and culture in our schools. We now have cameras. We now have protocols in place. We have our monthly recaps of myself, and this week I'm really proud to say that we had Jada join me. We did our monthly recap. And last year was our first year that we did town halls and public hearings regarding reconfiguration and how we could think a little bit smarter and also spending our money a little bit smarter. And then for talent recruitment and development, truly really wanting to recruit and retain our high-quality teachers. But so that means anytime any of our teachers leave, we have our exit interviews, but we're also developing 2 rounds of interviews and making sure we have people of color within those rounds so we could start recruiting as well. For this year, some highlights we had our very first ever district-wide assembly held at Forest Park Middle School Gymnasium, which allows all of our children to see themselves in one space. We had our new math curriculum, as I mentioned, and because of that, our Fast Bridge scores have gone up by 5.4%. We have our IDMs, our instructional data meetings, that are really truly focused around our subgroups and interventions. For family and community engagement, we're looking at an entire community, beginning with our picnic in the beginning of the year and our PTO that has really made a difference. We've installed, I mentioned, the cameras outside of Field Stevenson Middle School, our buses, and inside our Forest Park Middle School. We also opened up transportation for all our students. For talent recruitment and development, we've hired instructional coaches to align curriculum and provide coaching support for all our teachers, those who are requesting it, and those who may not be as ready for it as well. We hired a data strategist. All this data came from her developing it, many hours spent with Ms. Ibarra making sure that these come in. And then our professional learning days around equity. There are 6 of them all together where we're reading Joe Feldman's book of Grading for Equity and making sure that we truly understand what does equity mean and what does that look like for us here at the district. And so now for our next steps, really teaching to the core, making sure we're hitting our standards and not watering down our standards, making sure that we're having targeted instruction and our teachers actually asking our children if they understand the target of what they are doing and why they are doing it. We're bringing STEAM labs to our curriculum. We're having standard-based grading. We're having a shared vision and mission where our principals are speaking about vision and mission to all our staff members, and everyone understands, and they're allowing themselves to understand where they stand with the vision and mission. Continue having our preschool as a beacon for preparing our children for success. Changing the narrative of our middle school, where it is known for high school and beyond readiness. Our middle school teachers are becoming masters of their subject versus their grade level. Forest Park District 91 being a place of belonging, truly a place of belonging, providing a clear understanding of equity and evidence in all we do, and then working to get a partnership for algebra so that we bring this to our children, whether it's before school or after school, as long as we are offering it to them prior to them entering high school. And I will pause for any questions. I know there was a lot. Yes.
So, thank you. That was a lot. Thank you. That was great. Thank you. PBIS has always been a really integral part of the district, and not seeing it I'm just wondering why it was not brought into some of the data, because we've generally looked at correlation between behavior and performance and used some of our PBIS stuff, because that, you know, then that went along with IDMs and all that, is there going to be a separate PBIS component that we could maybe get, like, that we could talk about at some point, so we can kind of look at how does behavior impact some of the performance, and how are we doing PBIS-wise when it comes to all of the data that we were presented with tonight? That was just the thing that I noticed.
Sure. So we actually give a PBIS presentation always at the end of the year. I don't know if you recall. Yeah. And so I didn't want to separate it there since they have their own, but we could go ahead and provide any data you want with PBIS during that time. Okay.
Okay, I'll continue to ask questions. One of the things that I noticed was, it looks like, I know I'd asked about slide 64. It's the one with all of the gradations, and it's got like low income, no, like that one. There's no data in 7th grade. And so, I know I'm looking at you, Jessica, because I know you put this together. But I'm wondering if we could just at some point take a look at that and see like what's missing from there. That was one thing I noticed. You know, Dr. Alvarez, I'm wondering if, so people sat through or will sit through and watch this. I really hope for those people in the room, and thank you for so many district staff members for being here. I appreciate the support. It's important that everybody's part of the mission, right? If you could say in 30 seconds, like, what's the call to action?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Right now, the call to action right now is really looking deeply into our grades.
Yeah.
And seeing how we are utilizing our teaching and learning to match IER. I'm not about assessments, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
However, this is how we are being evaluated as well. And so if we truly look at our grading and preparing them for this high-stakes testing, as well as making sure that all of our children, particularly our Black and brown children, are being addressed and the needs that they need. That's a call to action to me right now.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's something that I'm curious about too. Can you elaborate on like grades and like the discrepancies, like grades and the standardized test scores?
Yeah, I do believe it might be a matter of gradebook audits, speaking further with my principals and seeing how they are looking at grades, how they're speaking about grades. Keep in mind, we have just started our professional learning, talking about grades as well, so I want to get a deep dive with our teachers to see where they fall. Grading is very personal to a teacher. It is one thing that they do and they're very proud of as well too. So I want to be able to hear from them and how they're grading in every subject and their understanding of it and how they're weighing. And then thinking about how is that matching the standards, and then when it comes to IAR testing, preparing them for that.
Can I ask a piggyback just on that? It's a personal thing. Is there, so each teacher can decide how much weight to put on participation, homework, tests? Is that different per teacher, or is there sort of a
No,
standard?
here, the teachers do speak and they collaborate with one another regarding that, but it is different in regards to grade levels. It doesn't have to necessarily be the same.
So I just wanted to elaborate on the connection between grading, standardized test, family involvement, and why I agree with you, why it's so important. If a child gets, let's just say, an A in one course, but may not be reaching the level that we expect on a standardized test, it would be confusing to a parent to understand what I can support my child with to get higher achievement on a standardized test. And since we are only going up to 8th grade, we have to consider the fact that those standardized tests are what our children are going to be utilizing to get into a high school if they choose not to go to public school. So that's why I think it's extraordinarily important that that is a issue that we collaborate on.
Sure.
And consider how we can make that process clearer.
Mhm.
Not necessarily point out the grade, but just the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fair.
I know on one of the slides, I don't remember which one, what percentage of students were low income? I didn't catch it.
Sure. I could pull it out for you again. I just was looking at it too. Mm-hmm.
That's based off the
Um,
free and reduced lunch.
Oh, that's not it. Yeah, it's somewhere in the beginning. Here it is.
Janet, 41.5.
23.9, well, there's all separate. It's 41.5%.
And that's based off the free and reduced lunch?
Mhm.
Yep, okay.
So I have one short question and then one that may be a for future reference question. And I wrote a lot down. There's a lot of really good information, so I want to try to boil some of this down into coherent questions. First, on one of the last slides we saw, we were looking, one of our goals was to increase enrollment by 15%. But one of the first slides that we showed was projections that we're saying we're going to be shrinking. So I'm trying to understand how
How
we
we're gonna
would
do that.
rationalize, like, if we have fewer kids just in general, it's going to be hard to grow enrollment in that. So I'd like to understand that.
Yeah, no, I think when we started this, it was last year with the principals, we do need to readdress some of the stuff. For example, the kids one, you know, ESGI is what we were using, and then I spoke a little bit further with Principal Stauder, we were saying that's not the goal we want here. So I will sit back with my principals again, and we will look at the attendance based on projections. Keep in mind, that was 75% of our children. If we had 100%, we would see a little bit differently.
I think it'll be interesting too, because this will be our first year where people know exactly where their second to third grader is going to go. And we will have, you know, a year of that, not experiment, but new experience, right? And so, we lost 20 kids. That's a lot in our district, particularly for one grade level. And so I wonder if that might I would love to see us be able to improve on that.
Yeah, the majority of the children that we lost came from Garfield, not necessarily, from Betsy Ross.
Yeah. Anecdotally, that feels consistent to me from what had happened, what has been our pattern. But still, I would love to see us improve on that now that we have one intermediate center, which I still think is the right thing to do. Go ahead.
So sort of a follow-on to that, if we could keep more of our middle school kids, because that's where we see the big drop-offs, right? 7th and 8th grade, our kids leave. And there was a whole lot of that story coming out here, and it looks like there are elements of, there's economic aspects to it, there's certainly demographic, if you look at the demographics of our student body as we go through it, there's a lot of stuff that there's probably a lot of factors that are outside of the school that we have little control over, maybe no insight into. I'd be curious to know if we could figure out what to do to keep more of our students all the way through 8th grade, if that would help us with the population. I'm going to try to put together a more intelligent, on-point question about that, because again, there were a lot of moving pieces there. So I'll like bookmark that to come back later.
This is just my last question. This is just my last question. I was wondering if there's a connection between parent involvement and children not returning to the school. If there was data on that.
Parent involvement and children not returning?
So let's just say, for example, Betsy Ross or Garfield. If you have high numbers in Betsy Ross, as you described with parent involvement, does that translate over into the Betsy Ross students staying in the system? If you have lower numbers in Garfield and lower of parent involvement, does that translate into less Garfield children coming back into the system? Is that something that we could?
I've actually have never seen any research with that because we have a lot of parents that are working and can't necessarily be as involved as some other parents, but continue to leave the child in the school district. I have other reasons to believe without having to say it here. I think some people know why some of our parents leave. And I will just say, our middle school, seeing it there, we need to change the narrative. That's why I wrote it there. And when our parents start seeing the narrative change from middle school, they'll feel a little bit more comfortable about leaving their children here and seeing the numbers. Right now, our 8th grade class is something like 32. It's a small class.
Thank you, Jessica, for putting this together. I thank you so much for doing that. You know, I hope that people will take this in as information. You'll roll it around. You'll think about it. You'll try to see what your part in helping our district achieve all of its full potential, which I believe is huge. A district just under 700 students that spends $28,000 per pupil should look a lot different from a performance perspective. I say that as an educator, as a parent, as a school board member, as a taxpayer, as a lover of Forest Park who is always talking about, please move to our hamlet. Like, we love it here. And so, you know, I think, I hope people will realize that, particularly like by making an investment in our data strategists, we never had this before. You've stuck around and you've seen this, what we had previously done, and there's, I'm not saying anything like, you know, shady. I'm just saying that the information shared was a lot different. And so for most people, this is really the first time that we're seeing all of this, and it's painful. It's painful to me, you know, because I see so much better for everybody. I want our teachers to feel so proud of the work they do. I want our families to feel so proud of leaving their children here to be educated. I want our kids to continue to feel great. I'll be honest, they're a pretty happy bunch at school. So I think that they are such a great asset, which is why I'm like, we have to be better. There's zero opportunity to not be. So I will say, personally, I'm pretty devastated by the 7th and 8th grade. Dr. Alvarez knows that, Principal Cass knows that. I've been pretty honest about that. I have a 7th grader. I only have one child, so I don't get to do this again. And I'm pretty heartbroken by those 7th and 8th grade numbers because I think about what the next step is for them, and I just desperately want them to feel prepared. And so, you know, I'm gonna shout out my fellow middle school parents. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. We all have 7th graders. You know, we will continue to ask all of our middle school parents, especially, yes, our kids are older. Yes, they are sometimes challenging as they transition into teenhood, but we really need to pull them in really close, and we need to really be engaging with teachers. Like that 5 essentials information, you know, about like teacher collaboration and parent engagement it's pretty serious. Like, we all need to be doing better, particularly at the middle school. So I'm going to really try to continue to encourage parents, and when I'm there, the staff, to lift them up, and also to continue to push them, to push our families to invest more time and energy and effort. You know, your kid still needs to be asked, how was school today? What did you learn? How can I be helpful? What's the homework? Like, those things still need to happen as our kids get older. So I'm just thinking about it from that very particular lens. Obviously, we want the same for every other grade, but I see that as like sort of a crisis at this point.
And our middle school teachers are working very hard.
They absolutely
The-
are.
The fact that they are now looking at the core, their
Yes.
subject, and becoming masters of it, I mean, this is something new for them as well.
Yep.
And as I look at them, they're working very hard.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you for saying that, because I don't want any of this to be misconstrued, that I don't acknowledge that. I do. It just is, as I said before, it's a really delicate ecosystem between staff, leadership, teachers, parents, you know, and so I think everybody is trying. I just think we need a little bit more collaboration and synergy and more focus on our shared goals. So I'm really grateful too for our strategic plan, which I know was a huge priority when you got here, and I think it's going to help keep us on track. And we're here working on it until at least 2026, these particular set of goals. So thank you, everybody. Oh, okay. Let's talk about some committee reports. I don't want to rush everybody, but, you know, as we make our way, let's try to be precise. Okay, teacher negotiations. We don't really have anything, except we have been meeting about stipends. So that's in the works. We don't have a settled plan right now, but we're working on it. B, board policy.
So we're going to be putting up for a second read today, later on, and that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Finance. John, do you want to say something?
Sure, we met on October 27th via Zoom. We discussed a couple different items. Bear with me, sorry, should have brought it up sooner. Talked about the financial audit. We talked a little bit of, quite a bit of time on the levy coming up. And a couple of things that Mr. Hibbert's putting together. Continue to watch for pupil spending. Provide the board with some numbers for staff members for tracking. And then next meeting, he's going to talk a little bit about some software to show the ROI on instructional programs. So it was a very good 45 minutes.
Yeah, it
and
was
so really enjoyable.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, E, superintendent evaluation. Do you want to go since John just, or you guys figured it out, sorry. I had crossed off engagement like you guys had already talked. Excuse me, carry on.
There's no report this month. We will be doing some good work in December.
Well, I just wanted to add, like, with the conference next week, there's some sessions about engagement and engaged committee that I'm going to be attending.
Wonderful.
I saw when I checked, like, some of the sessions on the conference, so
Yeah.
I'm going to make a point to attend those, to
Email
get
me.
some ideas. Since we're going to be restructuring and kind of go to it, I'll make sure to attend some of those sessions. So when we meet the next time, I'll have something to bring.
That sounds great. If I could add, did you want to go, please? Okay. If I could add, I met with Nudies Tuesday, Wednesday, yesterday, Wednesday. And we were just talking about a variety of things catching up. We had not done that in a while. And one of the things that we talked about was community engagement. And she had mentioned an idea that you all have been rolling around about a QR code, which I think is a really good one. I would love to see some action on that. I think that'd be great. The gist of the QR code is, I believe, a set of like 1 or 2 questions that everybody can snap. And that's how we get some feedback from everybody in our community. And then I know we had talked about sort of like office-y kind of hours for board members, and I would love some sort of like resolution around that. So if we could get something on the calendar to have in the works in January, that would be great. Cool. Thank you. Now, sorry.
Mr. Lyons and I met One of the things we were talking about was doing the superintendent evaluation digitally versus on paper. We will meet more than one time, but we will be coming next month with our evaluation tool ready to go for you guys all to see.
Great.
So we do have an evaluation, I'm sorry, we have a tool that we use for our teachers that I was told that we could actually put the superintendent one in there, which would be nice if the principal one was in there as well too, and just have it in one spot. So just so you know, we do have something called Teach Boost.
Can you just send us a copy of that, just so we can take a look at it? Or like how it's used, I guess, maybe? Or set up with IT, or?
You want to say something?
Sure, sounds great.
Okay,
And it's, what's it, Teach Boost?
Teach Boost.
Okay. So by next month, we've got something happening. Cool. Thank you. PPC.
I had to take an employee to the ER during the PPC meeting, but I have, but yes, but I have reviewed the minutes thoroughly and can give you some highlights.
Okay. Dr. Wright can weigh in too, if
Probably,
need be.
probably best. Building access, when teachers can get into the building, if it's not programmed into the FOBs was discussed, because, sometimes, you got to go in on a Sunday, and it was discussed that the staff just had to let the administrator know if anyone was going to be in the building. District-wide special ed meetings to really coordinate the special ed program that will be scheduled. Let's see. Special ed teacher roles and responsibilities versus the new assistant director of special ed, and what our special ed coordinators did prior to the new assistant special ed director. And they're working on bullet points that were addressed in that. Do you want to talk a little, again, I was in the emergency room. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Actually, they just had their first special ed meeting today. So and then they'll have another one on the 21st. But yeah, that's in regard, we don't have a assistant director as of yet.
Right.
So right now, we were asking of our teachers to support with providing dates to parents, but that has been taken care of. They do not have to do that anymore. We have someone else doing that for them. And prior to that, we actually had Ms. Bell doing that for the first part of the quarter. So Katie Bell, she's right over there.
Something came on the screen. I don't know what that is.
Oh. It was probably me moving it. So yes, so now they don't have to do that anymore, so. And I'm going to guess that was explained to special ed teachers, yep.
I think those were the highlights.
Those are the highlights.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. CEC.
CIC, what we're, Maurice is making gestures back there, and, oh.
Oh, it's a mic.
Oh, I didn't know what was happening.
It's a mic.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that gesture. That makes sense now that I know what it is. What we're doing now is the Friday after the board meeting, Maurice, Fuquan, and I, and Jeanette are just recapping, going over what we're going to talk about in the CAC meeting, kind of getting ourselves together so we will have a plan of action, so we go into the meeting just knowing what we're going to do. So we had our first meeting was more of kind of introduction. Everyone talked, like I said, we introduced each other. We talked about what our roles are going to be. We went over like the handbook, explained about going over that. We explained just how the meeting's going to be set up. We're very clear how we like to get out on time, and our meetings won't be extra long, and we're going to stick to a schedule. Explain how the agenda will be, introduce all the members to each other. Fuquan, am I forgetting? Fuquan was there also. Am I forgetting things? I feel like I am. Went over, going over 101s with the community, to set up expectations of exactly how the CAC was going to be, and gave people time to ask questions.
Okay. You good? Okay. And IASB delegate.
So we have our conference next week, and I need to submit how our board wants to vote on 8 resolutions. I sent the email out twice. There are some of you who still owe me your answers. I will stalk you separately. I need to have those. I will put a spreadsheet together. It will be anonymous so that I can share it with you all, so you can see that I'm going to vote as how the majority wants for each resolution. So please get those to me ASAP. If you have any questions, please let me know.
And even if you're not attending the, excuse me, the conference, we still want you to put your resolutions in. That would be great. So, all right, thank you. Okay, 9, items for discussion. So I will start just by talking about our board retreat. Oh, look at Lori's picture. So we had our board retreat moderated by Lori Grant, who's with the Illinois Association of School Boards, IASB. This is our first time working with her. I think my casual analysis with our colleagues was that people really enjoyed Lori and having her lead us in thinking strategically about the board and how we want to operate. We talked about board performance and holding ourselves accountable. We went over some more about our norms and how we like to operate and communicate with each other. And so I think all in all, I feel like it was a success. And to be frank, like, we should probably do these things more regularly. I think we had been thinking like annually, but probably even if we can do them, you know, every 6 to 9 months, I think that would be really helpful, just to sort of help us stay on task, which I thought she was really helpful for. So, yeah, anybody else want to chime in about board retreat? If you haven't filled out the survey yet, please do, so that Lori can get some solid evaluations from us. Okay. B, Dr. Alvarez, do you want to go about honoring native land?
So November is National Native American Heritage Month. During National Native American Heritage Month, we celebrate Indigenous peoples past and present, and we dedicate ourselves to honoring tribal sovereignty, promoting tribal self-determination, and upholding the United States' solemn trust and treaty responsibilities to tribal nations. I'm asking the board if we could begin to open all our public events and gatherings with acknowledgement of our traditional native inhabitants of this land. This will honor and recognize the land we live on in every board meeting. I want to make sure we are providing a space and expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we reside on, and a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. There is a guide that I provided you in the last newsletter. They're to help us acknowledge the land that we live on. The land of Forest Park is from Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, Sioux, and Kickapoo. It could be as simple as we acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, Sioux, and Kickapoo people. Or it could be a little bit even more of, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on traditional lands, and then naming them, and pay my respect to elders, both past and present. I've provided you a list of different ways we could do this, or we could change it up. But that is my items for discussion, and hoping that it'll be done every meeting.
Liz, do you want to talk about it now? Would you like us to just respond via email? What do you think? I wholeheartedly support this, and I mean, I think if we do the Pledge of Allegiance, why are we not also acknowledging, you know, the land that we're able to, you know, do this work on? How do you want us to?
I think during the discussion might be great, and that way people out there and here, I'm so sorry,
I know you've got to.
can hear where we stand.
Sure. Yeah, you're good. How about we, I mean, does anybody have a preference based on what Dr. Alvarez shared about the language in the statements? Do they prefer one over the other? There's one that acknowledges elders. There's a couple, there's a few of them. Does anybody have an opinion?
And I think the acknowledgement is definitely there. You know, we are on their land and we should acknowledge it. And I do think an expression of gratitude for that and acknowledgement of it.
Sure. Yeah, is Catherine, you're saying any of them are? No, you're fine. I sort of feel the same way, that I don't know that that one over the other is really speaking to me. I'm looking at them now. Okay.
Is there somebody from one of the communities? I mean, I don't know, this is unknown territory for me, so is there somebody we could ask who, from one of these communities, who could advise us on what they think would be appropriate?
That's a good point. Like if one is more, if there is one that is more, if there is a difference, if one is more respectful than the other, it could all be the same, or one could be more respectful than the other.
Yeah. It's a good point. I myself don't know.
I believe the guide provided these because these are all acceptable.
Okay, got it. I think the one that says, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held, that one, do you see that one? Underneath it, it says, yes, I think, it's kind of hard to know where they start and stop, but I think it's the second one.
With the acknowledgement, the respect to the elders.
Yes.
I agree, I like that.
So I'll read it out for everybody in case you don't have it in front of you. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the tribes that Liz mentioned, people, and pay my respect to elders, both past and present. I think that's the one that I would prefer. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, C, Dr. Hubbard. Number one, proposed STEAM lab locations based on staff survey.
Well, good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Alvarez, and guests. A lot of things that we've talked about today centered around one thing, around student data and how can we support them. And as Dr. Alvarez mentioned, it comes down to our foundation. And our foundation is, are we financially responsible? And are we maximizing and leveraging the resources that we have? So 3 things I did want to talk to you, I think center right around that. We started off earlier this school year with the bold ambition to make sure we implement some STEAM labs this school year. You approved a budget back in September that allowed us to do that. Thank you for that. Last month, we talked a little bit about the work we've done to see, is it feasible? We met with the architects. They looked at some of the rooms and gave some ideas and some suggestions. We shared with you some pictures. And then the feedback was, well, let's also involve the staff and engage them too to see where they would be interested in having these STEAM labs in Field Stevenson and Forest Park Middle School. So we did survey the staff, and got some results back. So I want to share with you those on the recommendations on where these STEAM labs should be located. So next slide. So for Forest Park Middle School, 71% of the staff really liked room 127. Room 127 is the room right there in the northeast corner of the cafeteria. So it's where we used to have our closed sessions, that room and the L-shaped room there. So they thought that was a great location. It would showcase for students. The architect talked about also maybe making a glass wall right there so you could see into it from the cafeteria. So now that we have the locations, they're going to be doing some renderings, and the goal is to have excuse me, have that for the December or January board meeting for you to approve, so then we can put that out to bid. So that is the recommended location for the middle school. Okay? Next slide is for Phil Stevenson. The recommended location is room 011, which is the staff lounge, which is downstairs in the basement. 59% of the staff voted that as the ideal place. And it's a great location with the plumbing there and the access to outside, so maybe have some outside component connection to it. So that's where the recommendation is for the STEAM lab for Phil Stevenson. Okay. Yes.
Just a real quick question on both of those. Obviously, we haven't had anybody come in to look at the spaces or talk about doing a build-out for these. Do we think there's any chance that we might have to move the locations based on architects coming in and looking and saying, hey, you've got plumbing issues or anything like that, or are we pretty comfortable that we can put them where we want?
They did come out and look at those locations, and they felt comfortable. They sent some estimates of the 3 different locations, and they went and looked at the biggest location and scaled it down from there. And the staff lounge and room 127 were part of that, what they looked at. Excuse me. And the plumbing was all there, the electrical, a lot of the infrastructure they needed was already there. So that's why they liked those. So I think it's completely feasible.
Cool, thank you.
And then for our audit, as Mr. Lyons mentioned, we had our finance committee meeting. Every year we do an annual audit, and the findings from the audit are shared with the board. What was asked this year was, normally the auditors come out and do the presentation to the board of their findings, and we haven't done that in the past. We've just shared the findings with the board. So the recommendation was that we have the auditors come out. So we did reach out to them. They agreed to be at the January board meeting and to present their findings and go over the audit report with the board in like a 15, 20-minute presentation. So then if you really have any questions, you could dive deep into them and see it from a totally different perspective. So they'll be out in January for that. Okay.
We also get our own copies of the audit report, which
Yes.
I was
Nicely binded
excited about.
book that they put together for you. So we'll have that for you.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, the levy. So the most important thing we have to do is make sure we're financially sound. And everyone has said the most important thing that I have to do is make sure we do the levy. It's been tough this year because the state has not given us the data we need. Normally that data comes out in September. We got it last week, Friday. So that's when we got the data for the levy. And we had 2 days to verify, which was the weekend, to verify the data and go over it. But I just want to go over what the levy is real quick again. And basically it's us asking for the revenue to get our money from the property taxes. Oh, my phone's talking. Illinois property tax allows for us to, an annual inflation, to increase our levy from the previous year. And that's what created the problem, because it's either you go with CPI or you're capped at 5%, but last year CPI was over 5%, it was 7%. So that's what made it so difficult. Next slide. So the levy consists of 2 parts. There's the operating levy plus the bond levy, which gives a final levy extension. We are very blessed in Forest Park that we don't have any bond levies. Mainly, we don't have no debt. So ours has always been zero, far back as I could see, for about 4 or 5 years, and I'm sure further. I just didn't have access to that data. So that's a great thing. So all of our levy that we're asking for is the operating levy, and that's all we've been proposing. So I wanted to share that, so to point that out there, that we're in good financial position for that. Next one. So some important factors that came into calculating this year's levy. One we used last year's final extension was $16,964,476. We also used the December CPI, which was 7%. We did not levy for 7%. We chose to stay below the 5% cap. I would tell you I was on a call yesterday with probably about 25 different districts, and about half of them are going for the 7%, and half of them are staying below the 5%. And they all had various different reasons as of why they were doing that. The other assumption is that we're going to get $1 million new in EAV off new property. Every year we do a rough estimate of that. On average, we normally only get anywhere from $500,000 to $1.2 million, so it varies. So I thought $1 million was a good estimate just to put in there that we'd get from new property. And then for 2021, the CPI for the PTEL, the calculation was 1.4%, which is down from last year's 2.3%. And then also the 2021 equalization factor was down 6.8%. And they're thinking that also because properties are being reassessed and we know the market was, so there's different things that calculated this, that was used to calculate this upcoming levy. Next slide. So in summary, last year, like our levies consist of two parts. It was the 16.9 million, nothing for bond service. This year, the projected levy that we're asking for is 17.8 million, which is 4.98% higher than we were last year. So we stayed below that 5%. I will tell you, on average, Forest Park normally levied about 4.93%. That's normally what they ask for the increase. That's not saying that's what we're going to get. That's what we're asking for. We are a cap district, so once the state does all the calculations, they would tell us what we get and how close we could get to that number. But we have to be able to ask for the max to get close enough to that number. Okay? That is the levy presentation, asking that later on that you approve it later on for the extension. Based on that, because today is November 10th, we need 30 days before we approve the levy. Our next board meeting is December 8th. Unfortunately, that's only 28 days from today. We are recommending that we have either a special board meeting in December after December 10th, or we move the December 8th board meeting. Ask if you could look at discussing that for today. Okay. Any questions?
So now is the time we should figure that out, yeah. Okay, so I know Dr. Hubbard had suggested the 15th. I can't make the 15th, so I could make it earlier if we kept our meeting the week prior and only did a short bond hearing, which is
It'd be about a 10-15 minute
10,
meeting.
15 minutes. And we're thinking we can't do it virtually, so we'll be in person. So we could do that. I guess what is people's availability? I pulled up my work calendar. I have good availability the week of the 12th, except until about 6:30 on the 15th.
The December 8th is also the day that our principals will be
Yes.
providing a presentation on their school improvement plans. So either they'll love the fact that it might be extended, or they won't because they have already put that date on their calendar.
Right. I think I'm
I could look at
inclined to
one right
keep-
now, seeing what she feels.
Wait, are you saying that you don't want to move it, or you're saying you want more time? That's what I was thinking. That I think it does make sense to keep it, can't wait to hear the principals, and just find a slice, a 6:30, the week of the 12th. So, do we have a Monday? Do we have a Tuesday? Do we have, how many days is it that we need? 30?
Yeah, any day after December 10th, and December 10th is a Saturday, so any day after that works.
Okay.
Can we do Wednesday, the 14th?
CAC meeting, thank you for that. What time does that start? 6:30. Okay.
This would just be like a 10-15 minute meeting. That's it.
I was going to say, can't be virtual. 6 is challenging. Let's put a hold on that one. Tuesday? Nope. Yes. You could do any of them. Okay. Monday? The 12th? 6:30? Yes. Mr. Brooks? Challenging? Okay. Is there a day that week that will work for you? I don't want to count you out, but if nothing's really going to work, then we need a quorum and we'll just focus on, again, not counting you out, but. Yeah? Okay. You don't have to say why. It just might be easier. Okay.
And what I would say, if anyone needs to be counted out, if you clicked on the link in the agenda, we're not going to change the estimate. So what is in this levy, if that's what it's going to be, that's what's going to be proposed in 30 days, so it's not going to change.
Right. Okay. So, where did that leave us? Wednesday? The 13th, yes. Ms. Vallow? I'm sorry, it's the 14th. Oh, right, you won't be here in December, so okay, that's okay. You're good?
Yeah, any night.
I'm good. How are you feeling on the 14th? 6:30?
That's the CAC.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. That is the CAC date. Okay, excuse me. And
Can we
John,
do
you're
it?
not available on the 13th?
No.
Okay.
What about 7:30 or on the 14th? I mean, after CAC.
That would be cutting it close. But before?
It's 15 minutes.
I think it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th, which is the CAC meeting. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so John is a yes. Oh, 6 o'clock? Yep, okay. Shannon is a yes. I am a yes. You are a yes. Yes. Fine. Dr. A? Dr. Hubbard? Yes. Okay, so we're going to do 6 p.m. on the 14th, Wednesday, the 14th,
Okay.
before the CAC. Is the CAC meeting here? Okay. Make your way to wherever. Okay. Okay, great. So we're going to do that at 6 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're good. So we're gonna do 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th. All right, great. I am going to ask for a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of negotiation, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees, and litigation. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make it.
And a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, let's go into closed session, please. Okay, thank you. We are back in open session. Okay, number 11, consent agenda items to discuss in closed session. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Fallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rummel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye, okay, thank you. Number 12, possible action to approve settlement agreement and general release for former probationary teacher. May I have a motion to approve, as we discussed in closed session, may I have a motion to approve the settlement agreement and general release pertaining to former probationary teacher Matthew Weedman and his pending claims against the district as presented by the administration?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Great. We need a discussion, please. Thank you.
This is based on what we discussed during closed session.
All right, everybody good? Let's vote. A roll call, please.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Fallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rummel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye, thank you. Okay, 13 items for action. Hey, Dr. Alvarez.
So these are our policies that we're bringing for, I believe it's second reading, yes, for second reading, and we're just going with press.
I forgot to say, may I have a motion, please?
Oh.
To talk about consider Board of Education Policy 6290, homework for third reading and adoption. I will make a motion. A second, please?
Second.
Discussion. I'm so sorry.
Just going with press.
Got it. Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Fallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rummel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Okay. 2, consider Board of Education Policy 510, equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment for first reading. A motion, please?
So
I'll make
moved.
the motion.
Second.
Discussion.
I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, what's going on here? Yeah. Now you guys are confusing me.
What happened? Sorry.
No.
We do have to go one there.
Policy 510?
About the homework one?
No. Equal opportunity and minority recruitment?
That's just going for first reading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we do have to go through
Oh,
each
we're
one.
going through each one.
Yeah.
I thought you put them in a bulk. Got it. My apologies.
You're fine. Any questions? Any discussion? This is for a first read. Okay, I'm going to take us to a roll call, please.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Fallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rummel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Okay. 3, consider Board of Education Policy 520, sexual harassment for first reading. A motion, please?
I'll make it.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion.
This is going to go for first reading, and then we'll discuss it as a policy committee.
Yeah, these are also taking off a former employee and updating the material to include a current employee as well. Right? Yeah, okay. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Fallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rummel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Okay. 4, consider Board of Education Policy 720, harassment of students prohibited for first reading. a motion?
I'll
So
make the
moved.
motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Just going for first reading.
Got it. Roll call?
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Vallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rommel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Okay, 5. Consider Board of Education Policy 770, Attendance and Truancy for first reading. Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Also going for first reading.
Got it.
Great job.
Procedural updating. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Vallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rommel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. 6, consider Board of Education Policy 7180, Preventing Bullying, Intimidation, and Harassment for first reading. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
The first reading.
Got it. Thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Vallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rommel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Okay. 7, consider adoption of a resolution celebrating November 15th, 2022 as School Board Members' Day. I will make the motion. A second?
I'll second.
Great. Discussion.
So School Board Members' Day is November 15th. If you allow me to read this. Whereas school board members are elected to sit in trust for their diverse communities, and in that capacity are charged with meeting the community's expectations and aspirations for the public education of their children. And whereas school board members are entrusted with the guardianship and wise expenditure of scarce tax dollars, and they are responsible for maintaining and preserving the buildings, grounds, and other areas. And whereas school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear shared vision of public education that sets highest standards for the education of all students and requires the effective and efficient operation of their districts. And whereas school board members adopt public policy to give voice to that leadership and employ a superintendent to administer board policy and are also responsible for monitoring the district's performance and compliance with state policy. And whereas school board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service with no compensation, and whereas school districts have faced enormous challenges over the past 2 years, and the strong, dedicated leadership provided by the Forest Park Schools Board of Education has allowed student learning and success to continue. And whereas decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life and safety in their communities, placing them as the front line of American democracy. Therefore, be it resolved by members of the District 91 school community, we proclaim November 15th, 2022 as School Board Members' Day as a way to honor those citizens who devote their time and energy for the successful education of our children and our future leaders. Attested by me.
Thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Vallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rommel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Thank you, Dr. Alvarez. Okay. B, Dr. Hubbard, consider adoption of the tax year 2022 estimated property tax levy. A motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
This is the part where we ask for the recommendation to approve the estimated tax levy. We're posted for the 30 days, and then ask you in December to approve the final approval.
Any questions? Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Ms. Vallow?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Rommel?
Aye.
Ms. Cotton? Aye. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Tyler?
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Additional matters of consideration from the board. Anyone have anything?
I do.
Great.
I attended the West Cook Division meeting. I had to look up the name, sorry. It was about the metaverse. What is it? And what's happening and what are the social implications? And it was just their quarterly meeting. It was pretty great. I didn't know what it was. I just was like, yeah, I want to go to it. It's great. Yay. And basically it was what is this guy's name? He is the Instructional Technology and Social Studies Coordinator at the Maywood Melrose Park Broadview School District. And basically he just talked about how they have like the virtual headsets and they're doing, I think they just installed them in their school district, and how they're now able to do, they're doing field trips, like they can do field trips just across the country now, and they can, and it's geared towards, I believe, 3rd grade and up, because it's not recommended for younger grades just due to the way it's set up, and how it's kind of opening up the world to these kids where they can visit, like he gave examples, like they can walk through pyramids now and actually focus on, when they're doing like history lessons, they can actually travel to like real history lessons and do like period time and really immerse in the lessons. When they're doing, if they're studying space, they can actually go into space and actually look at constellations. It's not just, oh, you're looking at a flat piece of paper and this is just, you're looking at stars. You're actually engaging in the lessons. It also talked about how they're bringing, I can't think of the company, but there's some companies that are bringing the technology to like underserved areas where like they're purposely building this into Black communities where they may not be able to have this technology, and they're building like resources where they can actually sell things and sell items and teaching kids things that way, and it's opening up a whole new world for those communities and allowing them to see other areas where they would not be able to see just because of, where they're at, and they would not have access any other way. So it's just preparing kids for this whole new world that was not there before. And also he talked a lot about, with this great new technology, there's a lot of other things that could come with it, like some of the like addictions that could come with it, like very, addictions with being online, how you have to still monitor that. Also some of the limitations, like some kids just cannot be online, like physically get sickness from it, and how they're going to try to have to monitor it where, yes, you have this great field trip, but like motion sickness, some kids cannot wear the headset, and they're kind of about to start monitoring it, like, yeah, you have this great field trip plan and kids are doing this, but what if you have one kid that physically cannot wear it? So they're about to start having to monitor that, and it's not recommended for some kids that may have disabilities, like whether it's, cognitive, they're going to have to start monitoring, they're going to have to start navigating that very real type of issues. I also want to say thank you to the Broadview School District that adopted me, had me sit at their table, because no one at this table was there to sit with me. And Broadview was very nice and had me sit with them, because they're wonderful people. But it was just great information, very engaging, and I would like to follow up to see, because it's very new technology, like they just built it, they're just starting to use it out, to use it now, and just following with them. And I mean, they thought of, people were asking all type of questions. My question was, hey, this is great. Thinking of the areas that you're in, you're a very diverse community. How adjustable are these headsets? It's great that you're going to have all these different kids wear it, but there are very different. You're a very ethnically diverse district. How adjustable are these? Because there's nothing worse than saying, hey, kid, put this on. It goes over you and your hairstyle very well. Then I had very big hair that day, which made me think of it. But there's nothing worse than the next kid coming up saying, oh, this does not work for me. And it's that age group where it's like, hey, this kid can't do it just because their hair is too big. I see Nerys touching her hair because she has big hair too. But he said they are now building it out with that thought in mind. And he actually went in, and before he tested the headsets, like, hey, if your company can't adjust very easily for these kids, we don't want you here. And he said, and they're actually, what they did with their teachers, like, you need to be able to adjust these. If your class is coming in here, you're going to have to be able to do this, and you're going to have to be sensitive to this, because there's different type of kids in our district. You need to know how to adjust them. You need to know not to make a big deal out of it. So they thought of these little points that some people aren't going to think about. And I was like, oh, look at you, guy. I like you. I like your style. So it was just very informative, and I enjoyed it. So I'm going to be looking for those when they come out to go to more of those sessions. 'Cause I didn't know what it was about, and I'm glad I went.
Can you let the rest of us know if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
any event?
Yes, yes. I was just teasing, though. I was teasing you guys, but it was fun.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll be very quick. I just want to reiterate again, I know it's late. Thank you to everybody who worked so hard on those slides. There were 90 plus of them. It took a lot of effort, but I think it was really worth it. I'm looking forward to the next one already to see like, what's going to be in there. And I am really hopeful about where we're going to be. And I'm thankful to live in a community that is interested in that information and will receive it hopefully in a way that's positive, and we can figure out how to move forward, and that we believe in data as truth. So I appreciate all of the effort that went into it. Thank you for the presenters and those behind the scenes who also contributed. As a lot of people saw on Election Day, the board was invited to meet Senator Duckworth at the community center. And so for those of us that were able to make it, I think it was really special. However you feel about politics, I love politics. However you feel about it, to be able to meet a public servant, and a really special one at that. So that was really fun. It was a proud moment for, I think, the board and the district. And then finally, happy winter, or happy Thanksgiving, Fall Festival, whatever you may celebrate. I hope that the time off for our students is restorative, and for our teachers as well, and we come back ready to hit the next 4 weeks in a really positive way. So happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate. Okay, with that in mind, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, it is 10:03, meeting adjourned. Thanks so much. Look at that TBD for our meeting.